So thanks everyone for being here. My name is Suzanne Grossman. I direct career services at the Marxe School. For those of you who may not have met me yet, I'm here with Samantha Bruno, who's also career services. Carla Robbins is here, faculty director of the MIA program. And we're very happy to have one of our MIA alums, Claudia Huerta, join us. And she has also invited her colleague from Inter-American Development Bank, Alessandra Richter. And both of them are going to talk about their career experiences. They're each going to share a little bit about their career history, what they're working on now. And then we'll have plenty of opportunity for question and answer after that. So please, think about your questions. I did send them the questions that you all submitted in advance, but you may need to, re-ask them in this format. And I think that's all the things I have to say, but without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Claudia, who's gonna start us off. So thanks again for being here, Claudia.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's really nice to see everyone. It's really nice to get to be here. It does not feel like I left Baruch that long ago. So this is very, very, very cool to do. So I thought I would go through a little bit of how I got to Baruch, what I did at Baruch, and then kind of what I'm doing now at work. And my idea is that hopefully it's helpful to everyone that's in school now to kind of think about kind of what options there are or how to kind of approach your time at Baruch. All this to say that even though I did it one way, it's definitely not the way that everyone can or should do it. So I'll start from the beginning. So and this will be relevant to my work, I promise. So my mom is Colombian, my dad is from Spain. They immigrated to New York. They met in New York, and my sister and I grew up there. So I actually got my undergraduate degree from the Fashion Institute of Technology, which sounds completely unrelated, but I promise it is related in a way. I studied international trade and marketing at FIT, and I was just super interested in the business side and the international business side. And I think part of that was growing up as a child of immigrants and always going to Colombia and to Spain and kind of being exposed to that. I really liked my time at FIT. When I graduated, I worked in Germany at Adidas for a brief time, and it was really cool. I loved it. I did not like Germany, so I came back to New York. And from there, I got a job at L'Oreal. So at L'Oreal, I worked for 4 years, and I did international business development. I really loved the job. Like the day-to-day was great, but I wasn't motivated at all. And I felt like if I was going to be 25 and working 80 hours a week, being motivated didn't seem like a high ask. And it seemed like something that I should really try to get in my life. And then when I was at L'Oreal, I did a lot of programs that were kind of like charity programs, so like philanthropy programs. And I felt just really compelled to keep working in that space. And this is big. I wasn't sure that I really wanted to move to the public sector, so I tried to do a bunch of volunteer work to see if I liked it. I did. And from there, I applied to Baruch, and I got in. Very thankful for this now. So I signed up for the MIA program, got in. It was great. I really liked it. And if you're new in the program and you don't know what you're doing, I'm here to tell you that that's fine, because I also had no idea what I was doing when I first started. I just really knew that I cared about migration, and I really knew that I cared about gender. And that was it. I just kind of had like these two thematic areas that I was interested in, and I wanted to work in the public sector. And I can assure you, I did not know more than that. And this leads to one of my big pieces of advice, which is to be open, but to be clear. So I was really open to things, but I was really clear on what I wanted, which is I wanted a job that wasn't administrative. I wanted a job that helped me feel like I was helping people, but I was really open to what that kind of looked like. And I feel like at your time at Baruch, that helps a lot to have that open mentality, but to have like some sort of clarity, because you can say yes to things that maybe you wouldn't have. So while I was at Baruch, I got really lucky. I had Professor Robbins my first semester, who really encouraged me, helped me work on my writing, thought that it was good. So that gave me a nice confidence boost, which helped on the way. And then something that I did that really helped was I stayed really focused on, if there was going to be this capstone, all the projects that I did, I kind of aimed them towards things that I thought maybe I would want to focus on later. And that kind of helped, so that by the time that I actually didn't do close to anything, but I had tried things out and I had kind of worked on like a path, if that makes sense. So I would say the big moment for me was that I did the Washington, D.C. semester, and I got an internship at the Inter-American Development Bank with Professor Robin's help. So this is kind of when everything starts to click. So I quit L'Oreal to do the internship, which was at the time incredibly terrifying because I had this very developed career and I was making a really good amount of money and I was leaving it. And so I did it and I moved to DC and it was great. The internship was really great. And at the end of the internship, they offered me a job. And there's a story here that Ali and I will both talk about what contracts look like in the public sector. But it was a yes. And so I took at the bank, we called them like product consultancies, which is where you work on a product and you don't have to go to the office. You just have like a project that you work on. And so I did that during my last semester at Baruch. And while I did that, I also applied to a Greece study abroad program and I got a scholarship from Baruch. And that's when I decided to really focus on migration and to see if it was something I really liked. So while I was in Greece, I got to do, it was 2 weeks, I got to do field work. It was fantastic. I went to see my grandma in Colombia. It sounds very expensive, I promise you it wasn't. I stayed at my grandma's house and it happened to be close to the Venezuelan border. And I did research and kind of fished around as to whether or not I wanted to do my capstone on that. And all of these things kind of came together and I started writing my capstone while I had the Inter-American Development Bank internship under my belt. And for the capstone, I worked with Professor Brian Jones, highly recommend, and Professor Robert Smith, highly recommend. So I kind of put my capstone together. It took a lot of work, a lot of trial and error, and a lot of not quitting when I wanted to quit through it when it got really hard. And I finished my capstone, and my capstone analyzed projections of climatic migration from Venezuela to Colombia. So using a statistical model. I loved it. Honestly, it was super fun. That's how I knew I was on the right track because I really enjoyed it. So even when it was scary, it was somehow so fun. When I finished the capstone, I was doing my this weird product contract at the bank. And this is another really big piece of advice for me, which is to don't network cheaply, network with value, which is like, there was someone at the bank who had the job that I wanted, that I would have wanted in the future, which was their job was specifically to work on loans for migration and climate change. Like you couldn't have designed the job for me better, but it was a much more senior role. And I asked him if he would meet, and I said, if I could have your job in 10 years, what should I do? And this is what I mean by like, don't just network to network, like go in with something so that the person doesn't feel like their time is wasted. And in a very fortuitous kind of circumstances, his name is Cesar, he's Colombian. I told him about my capstone and going to Cucuta and doing all this research, and he was really impressed. And so he recommended me to another boss who was hiring for the cities network at the IDB, and she hired me based on his recommendation. And obviously, like interviews, I did not fall apart in the interviews. And so the capstone is kind of like this very weird thing where it was a perfect moment of like networking and this work that I had done, and like I came in and recommended already, and it helped. And so I worked at the Inter-American Development Bank for 2 years, which is where I met Ale, who's going to talk later. We worked facing each other for a while. And so at the Cities Network, I worked on a lot of programs that mainstreamed the Sustainable Development Goals for cities in Latin America. So before COVID, this was a lot of like, we did training programs in New York and Philly and DC. We organized like workshops. We did a lot. And then COVID came about 6 months after I started, and we turned basically into a webinar factory. And it was kind of a challenge of like, how do you do things that are interesting, that inspire cities to implement the SDGs, which are not easy for anyone, but it's especially not easy in a Latin American context if you can't get funding at the city level. And I did that for 2 years. And then after 2 years, I kind of felt like I was ready to move. And this is kind of part of the contract conversation, but at the bank, you get hired as a consultant. Once you're done with this product role, you get hired as a consultant and you have 3 years. And a lot of multilateral banks have this set up. So it's something for you guys to know when you're like looking. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it, but it just means you should keep in mind. So you can work for like a limit of time. And so I had done 2 years and I kind of decided I don't want to run out the contract and have to look. So I'll start looking proactively. And I happened to do an event with C40 Cities, and the girl who was like my counterpart in organizing it, she was lovely. And I shot her a message and I was like, hi, I would love to work at C40, but I kind of want to hear about what it's like. And I don't expect you to find me a job, but it seemed like we got along great, so it'd be great to talk. And we spoke, and then I saw a job that opened up in climate and migration at C40, and this is again like fortuitous timing. So I applied, her name is Annalise, I used Annalise's advice, and I got the job. And it's in climate and migration. And this was another great example where my interview was me reciting my capstone at people. Except that I had done my capstone years prior, and so I talked a lot about like my experience at the bank and how it had helped me, and how L'Oreal had actually also helped me, even though it was private sector. And so now I work on a climate migration task force, and we're working on an action agenda that's going to be presented at the climate change conference in November. And my day-to-day is basically just all like, how do we engage at COP? What do we have to do? How do we do it? How do we streamline messages? And I work from home. I moved to Amsterdam. I work online from Amsterdam, and it's fantastic. I highly recommend it. And I try to still volunteer because for me, it really helps give me clarity, and I think it's important. I think that was 15 minutes probably. But Suzanne, tell me if that was clear.
That was great. That was great. I'm sure there's more you could say, but we could pause it here and then come back. Thank you. Awesome. Alessandra, do you want to take it from here?
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you for everything to invite me, and thank you, Clau, to contact me and invite me to be here. So, well, hi, I am Alessandra Richter. As Claudia said, I am from Peru, and well, I am currently working at the Inter-American Development Bank at the Housing and Urban Development Division, and I am a consultant there. So I will tell you a little bit about my story, how I end up in the US. I am living now in Washington, DC. I lived before in Peru, but well, I will tell you a little bit about that and why and how I am here. And also telling a little bit about, I will tell a little bit about my job now and some advice, as Claudia said. And also, if you want, then we can expand more on multilateral organizations, contracts, and how is the work there. And maybe if you want advice on that, I can help you with that, because I have focused my career in international development, and I like multilateral organizations, and I am now exploring different ways to stay in this type of work. So we can talk about more about that. So, well, I as I told you, from Peru. I was born and raised in Lima, and I studied my undergrad in economics in Peru. And since I finished my career, I knew that, well, I didn't knew, but at the beginning I tried different things, and well, I interned in finance, and I interned in the private sector, and at the end I said, okay, so I want to focus on public policy and well, at that time, more public policy and public sector career. So when I finished university, I started working in the public sector in Peru. I worked at the Ministry of Agriculture, and then I worked at the Ministry of Housing and Sanitation. And that was like 3 years. And then it was like a networking thing. And it was because of my work there in the Housing and Sanitation, in the Ministry of Housing and Sanitation, that I found a job in the IDB in Peru, in the Inter-American Development Bank in Peru. So I was working at the Fiscal and Municipal Management Division. And I also, in that work, I also led the implementation of a project that was about emerging and sustainable cities program. That was a big program in that time in Peru, in the IDB. Now it doesn't exist, but at that time they were applying the program everywhere in a lot of cities in Latin America. So I helped in the implementation in 2 cities in Peru, in Huancayo and Cusco. So I think that experience was one of the key experiences in my career, because there is where I found that I loved to work with local governments. And so I went to the local governments a lot. I went to municipalities. I interacted with lots of stakeholders in the cities in Peru. And then I decided that I want to make a master in the US. So I was clear that I want to came here, well, in the US or in Europe, but I was trying to decide where. So at the end, I made my master in the School of International Public Affairs in Columbia University. And I made the master in public administration and development practices. So that was also a great experience in my life. And when I arrived, well, that was 4 years ago in 2017. And well, it was the first time I was like studying abroad, but also I didn't know exactly, but I kind of knew that I didn't want to go back to Peru and I wanted to create an international career. So as Claudia was saying at the beginning, it's like you don't exactly know what is going to be your career path, but you have an idea of what you want. And I think sometimes it's easier to know what you don't want. So that's something that you can like begin to take out of the list. So I was like clear that I didn't want to go back to Peru. I wanted to make a career internationally. I didn't know where yet. And so that was one thing that I was discovering in the master. And for example, I decided to make my internship in Africa, in Liberia. I went to Liberia to make my internship. That's one kind of advice I could give to you. And I saw some of the questions in the list, and someone asked about how you can pursue a career abroad. So I think that one thing is that, like, if you know that you want to do something international and you want to live in other countries, I think that you can take advantage of different programs or things that the master will give to you, capstone projects and all these projects that you can engage and go to different countries, because at the end, or well, at least now with COVID, interact with different people, because that's one very important thing that you have to demonstrate when you want to do a career in international development, that you have these skills to adapt and to talk to people from different environments. You have skills to adapt to the culture, to understand the culture, and to be able to work in different countries with different teams. So I think that's a very important advice. And that's something that I really learned in Liberia, because, well, I came from Peru, where it's not a perfect country, of course. But then when I went to Liberia, I was like amazed with all the things that I didn't know that were happening, and a lot of things I learned a lot of, and also it was 3 months, but I think it helped me to grow a lot as a person, because it's really interesting, that experience. Well, and then after that, I decided in the master, I was looking for different courses to strengthen my skills. And also I was trying to understand and see what sector I want to continue working on. And really, this was something that was just happening. But in my case, I thought when I just arrived to the master that I didn't want to continue with cities and with urban development. That I was like, okay, I will discover what I really want to do. But at the end, when I was taking all the courses and when I was selecting elective courses, all the courses that I selected were about urban things. So I did urban economics, I did urban leadership, I did a lot of things. I made a lot of things urban governments related to urban things, that at the end I said, like, okay, so this is because I want urban, or the urban sector. So at the end, I was trying to figure out that, and I made my capstone in open government in local governments in Colombia also. So I went to Colombia again, interacted with local governments. It was a great project. And then, well, when I was trying to find a job, as I told you, I was looking in the US and also in Latin America. That was something that I decided, like, because when you are doing this like career selection, you have to think like also in where you want to be, right? So at the end, I knew it was like the US or Latin America. So I applied to different jobs. And how did I end in the IDB? Well, I already had contacts there because I already worked in Peru, but I didn't knew so many people in DC because I was more with people in Peru. But of course, all those contacts helped because they were contacting me with different people. I talked to a lot of people in the IDB, in the World Bank, in everywhere. And well, I was based in New York, but I came a lot to DC also to talk to people because I think that's really important. Well, now it's more because of COVID, there's more of these online things, but in that time we had to come and take like these coffee chats and talk to people. And I think that helped a lot because not because you're going to for sure get a job, but at least you can understand what the organizations do, how is the job, and like asking to different people that are there. And then well, just it was like very weird because on one of my visits in January, I finished in May. I talked to the one that hired me, the boss that hired me, but it was like very random. I talked to him because a friend told me like they are looking for, maybe they are going to hire people, whatever. And I talked to him, and then I explained what I wanted to do. I talked to him about my capstone too, because it was very related to what they were doing. That was like urban governance. And then in August, when they were looking for someone for real, I applied and took it again and found this job. And of course, I had also, as Claudia said, recommendations from people, but well, in my case was a little bit easier that because I already worked with people from IDB, so that was like something that was easier. But yeah, I think that the first recommendation for multilaterals is let's network with people, talk to people. And as Claudia was saying, there are these type of contracts that are like external product contracts that basically they are giving to the people, if like the person that is going to hire someone knows someone and like they think they are an expert on that, it's like a direct contract. So at the end, the way is talking to people and asking and telling them that you are willing to do that. And well, about what I am doing now, I am like, well, as I told you, I am in the cities laboratory. We are a very small group. We are like 4 people. And what we do is promote innovation in cities. So we interact with cities in Latin America. We also partner with the Cities Network where Claudia was working. And so they help us more with like this, making the contacts between the cities and sharing knowledge. And we are more focused on experimentation and innovation. So we are trying we give technical assistance to the cities to apply experimentation approaches and trying to generate these capacities in cities, because Latin American cities, it seems like innovation is everywhere, but for real, there's a lot happening. Like there's no like so many capacities to innovate. So we are trying to give all these capacities and financial resources to make experimentation and innovation. I also support in some projects. I am in the division. I am now currently working. This is not in the city's laboratory, but it is a program in Santo Domingo, in Dominican Republic, and it's about tourism and revitalization of the historic center. So that's a loan, but I also wanted to know more how the loans work in the bank. So I am now working on that in that project. And yeah, basically that's what we are doing. And well, I can talk more. I think I talked a lot, but I can talk more and ask your questions that you have.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful and interesting. At this point, we can open up to questions. You can put them in the chat. This is a small enough event where people can unmute themselves and ask a question. Just use the raise your hand function, or put in the chat that you have a question, and I will invite you to unmute. If you are going to do that, just make sure your question is something that will be interesting to everyone or as many people as possible, and not like a super niche question, just specific to you. So does anybody have a question? Otherwise, I will go to the questions that were submitted, but I figured some students might want to ask themselves. Okay, I see Storm has a question. Go for it.
Hi, hello everyone. So first of all, that was very impressive. Thank you for coming to talk to us. I'm a second semester MIA student, so I really appreciate hearing from somebody that was in my shoes. My question, I guess, is towards, well, my original question was why you left L'Oreal, but you kind of answered that one. But essentially, since you guys are exposed to such, to the IDB, I was wondering, what was your take on the trend of companies divesting from traditionally fossil fuels and like sin industries, and where people and banks were prioritizing divesting from those industries too? I guess, I don't know, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, did you ever look at that actually?
What?
I'm asking Ale if she looked at divestment. So we were in because we were in the housing policy, we looked a lot more at how do you incentivize green housing or sustainable housing, but I don't know, Ale, if you looked at divestment.
No, it was more what you were saying, like incentivize or promoting this climate change adaptation and mitigation, but no, we didn't do that. But
I will tell you, oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, go.
No, I was going to say that at L'Oreal, before I left, they were definitely still invested in it, and we're not interested in investing no matter what. But go ahead, Ale, pardon.
No, that I think, well, I don't know exactly about that what you asked, exactly that topic, but about environment and climate change, there's a lot happening, and now it's the trend in the world. So I think it's a lot happening there. And multilateral, the IDB and the World Bank work on that. They have, well, the IDB has a special division that is in charge of climate change and sustainability. It's part of our sector, but it's a different division. But I think they are more focused on adaptation and mitigation of climate change. And what they do is more it's like a transversal division. So they give advice to different projects and different programs happening in the bank. The bank's very big, and they have a lot of, they are focused on a lot of sectors, but the division of climate change is working with all of those sectors and giving this advice to to incorporate climate change issues in the project. So at the end, you have like this as a transversal thing in the bank, because of course it's very important. And then there, I don't know exactly of the topic, but about like sustainability and climate change, there are very big organizations like working on that. For example, WRI. Well, I think that will also the UN. Like there are different ways that you can approach that, but it will depend on what part do you want to do, because also you can do that from this private sector. So at the end, you can see like different, also like these all sustainability approaches that there are like in the private sector and in the big companies. Also, you can like work on the sustainability parts of the companies. So, well, maybe Claudia can talk more about the private sector because he has more experience there. But I think there are a lot that now it's a very important topic, and a lot of organizations are working on that.
Thank you.
Maria has a question. Thank you, Claudia and Alessandra, for being here. My question, do you see a consultancy position possibly transitioning into a full-time position? I see a lot of these consultancy positions available, but I'm not sure I'm into this idea. I prefer a more traditional full-time position instead. And agreed, you see this at the United Nations too, and some of the UN, other UN organizations. Thoughts on that?
So from the IDB and the C40 experiences, Ale knows more about the IDB, but at the IDB, it's very, very, very difficult to get from consultant to staff, like very, very difficult. At C40, it seems to be an easier path. Like at the IDB, I was probably too young and I felt like I was definitely too young and didn't have the right experience to be staff at the IDB. Like that just didn't seem like a path for me. But at C40, I got hired as staff directly. So it's, I also consultancies, again, I can also talk to this, but consultancies, there's real pros and there's real drawbacks to them. At the IDB, you don't get benefits, like any, and it's a thing to keep in mind if that's a thing that you really need and that you can't get somewhere else. But yeah, at C40, definitely more flexibility, but I don't know, Ale, what do you want to say about?
Yeah, I think, okay, so this is like, I think that if you wanna, well, more for international students, I think that one way to stay in the US is with these contracts, because then it's very difficult to find a visa sponsor. So multilateral organizations are a good option to have a visa very fast, because you have the diplomatic visa and it's easier. That's one of the advantages of this type of contracts. But it is very difficult to get a staff. Yes, the problem in the IDB is that you have this consultant position for 3 years and then you have to leave, and you can't come back as a consultant, internal consultant. You can come back as a product and external consultant after 1 year, but not as an internal consultant. In the World Bank is different. It's not, that doesn't, it's not like you have a limited time. You can be consultant of all your life if you want. Of course, it's not that someone wants to be consultant for all their life, but you can. But there are other limitations, as for example, in the World Bank, you have 150, you can only work 150 days in the year, and they pay you per day. So at the end, you have this limitation that you have less days to work, but well, you can work maybe in other things. It depends on your visa status, but you can work in different things. So, and I haven't worked at the World Bank, but I have talked to a lot of people in the World Bank, and that's why I can tell you about that. And I think in the World Bank it's more difficult to get a staff position because there's a lot of competition, and of course you have like a lot of people that wants to focus on international development. international people mainly, their options more like, their options are always focused on World Bank, IDB, UN. So at the end, it's very difficult to find one. It's not impossible, of course, but it's difficult and it's gonna take time. And there's a lot of, and I think that one of the main things is network with people, talk to people, and like being inside, you have to, it's kind of political at the end. So you have to talk to people, and if you have someone that sponsors you, you will like get a staff. Like it's easier if you have someone, for example, a project like a director or a manager or a division chief that will like recommend you and sponsor you to get a staff position, but it's not so easy. And then another thing is important to take in account in this type of banks is that now, if you want a technical position, like a position of like working, not like in human resources or communication, more a position like interacting with clients and giving loans and like this, like the business of the bank. Now the positions are more abroad. They are not in the US, like they are where the clients are. So for example, in our division, they have just hired someone in the Suriname office, for example. They are opening positions in the countries, in Colombia and Peru, in different countries. So at the end, if you want to pursue an international career in a multilateral organization, you have to be willing and able to go to different countries. I think that's a very important thing to know, because if you want to stay forever in the US, it's better to consider other things, because they are always changing and trying to move you like to different, and then they give you a position, for example, in Argentina, and 4 years after they move you to Brazil, and that's the way to improve in your career. I think you have to be able to do that. And in the World Bank, well, here in the IDB is Latin America, and the World Bank, you can go everywhere, but it's very important to know that that's how it works. So at the end, if you want to do that, you have to be able to do that too. It's like a diplomatic life at the end.
That's really helpful. Thank you. There's some questions in the chat. I'll get to those in a second. Abigail, you have your hand raised. Would you want to?
Yeah, hi. Sorry, my lunch hour. Thanks, everyone. I'm sorry if I missed this because I joined a little late, but I think to Claudia specifically, I'm wondering, hearing that you came from L'Oreal, did you have, and if you already addressed this, I apologize, feel free to just tell me, but did you have a difficult time transitioning from more corporate environment at L'Oreal over to this side of things? I was just wondering if, in terms of interviewing, going through the process, people were receptive to kind of your background, given that it was more corporate.
I didn't, so good question. The funny thing about L'Oreal is that it's a bit different from other corporate cultures, where if you know someone that works at L'Oreal, you know that it's like a monster company and that they work you really, really, really hard, and you have to be very competitive. And so people that know L'Oreal actually really tend to respect L'Oreal. Like my boss at the bank, her brother had worked at L'Oreal, and so she knew what it was like and respected it. I think, yes, I had a harder time. I think I needed more help from networking than typically, especially because when I did FIT to L'Oreal, like I knew what it was like to have the perfect resume and the perfect profile and how easy that movement could be. So I needed a lot more networking. I cannot tell you how much time I spent on cover letters to like sell myself. I did a lot of networking, telling people why they should trust me, why they should believe in me. Normally people are not averse to private, in my experience, they're not averse to private sector and public sector. It's actually like pretty valued. But I, like L'Oreal, if you don't know it, it sounds like I tried on creams all day, and that's not what it was. I did a lot of business and a lot of relationships, and I just had to convince people that it was worth it. But yeah, it was like, I'm not going to tell you it was harder, because it was, but it's, please trust me, if I could do it, you can do it. That would be my advice.
Thank you.
Okay, that's a good question. Carla had asked for Claudia, what are the key differences between working in a multilateral and an NGO?
Politics and money. We have a lot more flexibility as an NGO, like infinitely more flexibility. It's glorious, the flexibility that we have. And we also have about 10% of the money that we had at the bank. Like at the bank, I used to issue at the bank, you can pay people for less than $5,000 and like no one needs to see it. It's ethical because you want it to be ethical. And at the bank at the C40 yesterday, it was like a fight to get $300 out. It's very humbling. But the flexibility is great. Like at the Cities Network, I'll give you an example. We always wanted to invite the mayor of Bogota. The mayor of Bogota is not aligned politically with the president of Colombia, and as such, we were never ever allowed to talk to the mayor of Bogota. And we don't have that issue at C40. I'll be honest, there's other issues. There's just something called the loss and damage mechanism, which essentially says that, like, to boil it down, rich countries should give money to poor countries to pay for loss and damages from climate change because it acknowledges that developed countries have contributed to it. We had a meeting today where we got told that we could not say it or Switzerland would pull all the money out. So it's not that you're exempt from it, it's that it applies in a different way. But yeah, I would just also say that the people that work at NGOs are also really passionate. The people that work at the bank are also really passionate and really smart. So it's not that one is necessarily better than the other, but yeah.
But Clau, just a question to follow up on that. Do you think, because what I see, I haven't worked at the NGO, but what I see in the bank is that it's very bureaucratic and politic. And
it's a great point.
I don't know if C40 is like that, or do you think there are differences there?
C40 has bureaucracy, and it's amazing because they think that taking a week to get something is long. And I come from the IDB where Ali and I know that if you get something signed in a month, you've broken the speed limit. So it's still bureaucratic. I think of it as like it's bureaucratic because it's other taxpayers' dollars. But the bank is bureaucracy to a different level. And I think from Ali and I have not worked at the World Bank, but from all the conversations we've heard, I don't think the World Bank is better or the IMF is better at it. So yeah, if you don't like bureaucracy, I really, really, really don't recommend multilaterals.
Great. Andrew is asking, many of the challenges that cities face are regional or national in scope, global warming, immigration policy, infrastructure, etc., and require cooperation with state and national governments. Does an emphasis on cities limit your ability to tackle these problems?
Sure, the short answer is yes and no. Yes, because a city, like for me, a city can't change migration policies, point blank, period. No, and I think Ali can definitely talk to this because cities are actually the front line of every problem that except rural or agricultural ones. So a lot of times mayors are super knowledgeable and they're the most willing to do innovation projects. Like I have not heard of a federal innovation lab. Like Ali works only with cities because only they do it. So like everything, there's pros and cons. But yeah, I don't think Ali and I are naive to, not that you were implying that, but we're not naive to it, and mayors are also not naive to it.
Yeah, I will add to that well, in the case of the bank, the multilateral banks, they give, well, the business of the banks are giving loans to the countries. And that's a limitation too, because cities can't, well, in Brazil, yes, well, specifically in Latin America, in Brazil, cities can have a debt themselves, but only Brazil. Like all the other countries, you have to talk with the national government to get a loan, for example, for a city or to address something specific in a city. So I think that's a limitation too, Because if you want to solve something in a city specifically, you need to pass all this bureaucracy and bureaucratic things, and you have to at the end negotiate with the Ministry of Economics, yes, with the Ministry of Economy, that sometimes they are not aligned to what cities want. So I think that's a limitation in terms of the bank, because sometimes we can't do some things that will help cities directly because of all these things of like of political issues, bureaucracy, and maybe what Clau was saying, like if the president is not aligned with the city, like there are a lot of things there that you have to consider, and sometimes that's an obstacle to work directly with the cities. And I think I will say that's the main limitation. But by the other side, as Claudia was saying, they are the front line. So at the end, I think the best way to help cities is with technical capacities and technical assistance, because at the end, we can't give a loan directly, but we can help the cities, or well, the local governments to create capacities, and at the end, try to change a little bit their mindset. But I think that's the best way, because it's very difficult in terms of financial issues, and well, it depends, but I think like the limitation that the cities can't get a loan directly it's a huge limitation for us.
I will tell you, like this came up yesterday at work. There's this big push at COP to get 100 billion, I think it is, 100 billion in funding for the global South. And our whole thing is there's no way for the cities to touch it. There's no way. You can do 100 billion, it doesn't matter if you don't give it to cities directly. But that's for each country to, like I was saying, to like Brazil can be in debt, like Detroit almost declared bankruptcy, but that's not possible anywhere else in south of the US.
There's a question from Ying. Are there any technical skills or software you'd recommend students to learn before graduating, especially for students pursuing a career in sustainability?
So I will say like specific, well, I will say, well, I am an economist, so I have this bias for data analysis, but I think it's very important, data analysis. Like if you can take at least 1 or 2 courses about data analysis, it's important. I think it's worth it. And now, well, that's of course also a trend in the world. So there are a lot of softwares. Like at the end, you're not gonna use for sure, for example, Python or R or these things, but if you like that and if you wanna work on that, I think it's important, at least to understand what you're doing. Also, I think geographic systems, GIS, and all these softwares are very useful. I, for example, don't know exactly how to use GIS, but I have been like, but what I do is like, someone make use the software, but at the end, I need to understand how it works. I need to understand to read the maps, to read different things. So at the end, I think that this knowledge about data and data management can help. And then also, well, of course, communication skills, negotiation skills, project management skills. Maybe, I don't know, Clau, if you want know, well, you know more the courses and the things in Baruch, but maybe you can say more about that. But I think that in general, those skills are important. And as I told you, I think that for international sustainability or international development, the capacity to adapt to different cultures and the capacity to talk to different people and the capacity to interact with different stakeholders, from beneficiaries to ministries, that's very important. And yeah, I think those, and also if you want specifically sustainability, take courses about sustainability, take courses about the topics, because at least in multilaterals, they also require some knowledge about the topics. Like you can't go, for example, to the sustainability area if you don't demonstrate that you are interested on that and that you have experience in something related to that, at least your capstone, but something that, or courses, but something that you can say, okay, I know a little bit about the topics. And then you will learn there. But of course, you need this like presentation, like a letter of presentation that will give you like some things that will give you like, that you can say and demonstrate that you are interested on that and you know something about that.
I have a very fundamental one that has taken me very far in my career, and I swear to God, this is true. PowerPoint. Like you need to be able to make nice PowerPoints. I swear to God, on everything. That has been a compliment I've gotten from every single person that I've worked with, that I made good PowerPoints. And I would like to thank the Fashion Institute of Technology that used to score a percentage of my grade on my PowerPoints and whether or not they were pretty. So I know that sounds really stupid, but if you make ugly PowerPoints, you should really work on it because it matters a lot in your job, like a lot, at least in all the jobs I've had.
That's really good to know. How valued is this is from Pavel, how valued is the knowledge of foreign languages? Is that a skill you'd recommend investing in for building a career in NGOs and nonprofits?
My current boss speaks 5 languages. I speak 2, and I can tell you that I feel the difference. Foreign languages, if you want to work in international organizations, are everything. It matters a lot. It matters what projects you get staffed on. It matters like if you're going to get sent abroad to do things. Like it's everything. I mean, I speak 2, and Ali can tell you that the second one is not perfect. But if I sincerely, if I had more time, I would learn more languages because it matters a lot.
Yeah, well, I agree totally with that. And well, in my case, I only know Spanish and English, but for example, it happened to me in the World Bank that I had an interview and they told me, do you know French? And I didn't. And I couldn't get the job because of that, because it was a position for Mali. So at the end, it was here in the US, but you had to interact with Mali. So at the end, it's like, you need, if you want to work with different countries, you need at least one of the, like, you need at least 2 languages, I think, but then also think on what you want and try to practice more or to learn more languages depending on that. I think French and Portuguese are really useful. And well, Spanish, but apart from Spanish, French and Portuguese I think they are like key also.
I would say if you're interested in migration is all over the world. If you're interested in migration, like pick the region that you want to work with. I would have loved to work in Europe. I mean, I live in Europe, but I don't work in migration in Europe, for example, and I would have loved to, but I don't speak Arabic and I didn't think that I could learn Arabic convincingly fast enough to be able to do it. And I remember I wanted to spend the summer in a refugee camp and it was like, I don't know what value I add if I can't talk to them.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, for current students who are earlier in their program, there are some different language related awards through the State Department or Fulbright that some of our students have gotten. So that's something to keep in mind if you want that experience. Lindsay has asked, I would love to hear about how COVID has impacted your organization's work with cities and your day-to-day experience working on these teams.
Ali, I'm interested in your answer, actually.
So, well, I think a lot, but well, I think that the first thing, and Claudia mentioned that when she talked about her experience, is that before COVID, we traveled, we made a lot of events in person, we, well, in my case, I was doing, in the lab, we were doing this like pilot project. So we went a lot to the cities, and it was very useful to see where we were going to apply and the project, and like made an assessment, a diagnostic, like seeing the things and talking to people. And I think that was like very difficult at the beginning with the COVID, because well, we didn't have that like flexibility to go to a countries, of course. And then I think that mainly cities more than the national governments were very impacted with this at the like, because they weren't able to work from home at the beginning. Like for them was very difficult to adapt. For us was easier because we had the systems and everything in our laptops. But there are municipalities and cities that they didn't have laptops. They had to like, they had like the computers in the government. So at the end, I think for them was more difficult to adapt, and then for us was more difficult to work with them by virtual meetings. But well, at the end, I think now everyone has learned, and now, and we from the lab side, we could do, for example, participatory processes virtually. We could do like all these things that we did in person, and we went and talked to the neighbors. At the end, we managed to make it by virtual meetings. One of the key things was to partner with local actors. We partner with local firms, local NGOs that are next to the people, and they have this like capacity to gather everyone. So at the end, they made a lot of marketing issues, and they helped us a lot to make the processes virtual, but it was not easy. And I think and I think like, well, I think that was one thing, but I think that now like a lot of things had changed, and now it's easier in the terms that we don't need to go to talk to them. Like before was like we had to make the missions and go to the country to interact with the clients. Now it's more flexible by teams. Like we talked more today. We are closer to the clients, I think. And well, in a different way, but I think now it's more flexible in that term. But yeah, I think that was basically, and in the case of the lab, because of the participatory processes were difficult, but now I think we adapted, and the cities adapted to that. So I think now it's a little bit easier. Clau, what do you think about that?
At the network, it totally changed it because we did in-person training programs. And I remember in January of 2020, I had a piece of paper, and I had, I think, scheduled like 6 trips internationally, and I was very excited about it. And, I did get stuck in Colombia at the start of the pandemic because of the bank, but besides that, there was no more travel. Yeah, at C40, I wouldn't know how to tell you because I started remote, and the project's new. So I don't know that we would have done it much differently, actually.
Yeah, but at least, for example, now we have a program where we made exchanges with European cities and Latin American cities. And we are doing that with Austria. And from Austria, they told us like, we don't want to make it virtual. We would like to make it like a face-to-face program. So we had to postpone it, and it will be next year. But there are things that don't change, and of course there are like, you have to make it like face-to-face, and at the end we postpone a lot of activities because of that. But those that we can do it virtual, we have done that.
I'm being mindful of time. I know there's one student waiting with one question with their hand raised, but I want to check in with Claudia and Alessandra about that. You're okay. Okay, Ladori, you want to ask your question?
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to ask, in terms of like working abroad, I know someone mentioned that sometimes they kind of transitioning out going overseas and during for certain projects and things like that, and people kind of staying in their location. But in terms of if you did want to work abroad at a certain office, is it more, how long term is it? Is it maybe like for 2 years, or is it more project based, or maybe you'll go somewhere for, I don't know, maybe 6 months or something like that? I'm not sure, depending if it depends on the agency. Are there options where it can be short term and then long term, or what? Just want to see like what you've seen in the field.
Ale, this is you.
Yeah, I think it depends on the organization. Of course, I can talk about the IDB, or the World Bank, but I don't know other organizations very well on that. But in IDB, it's 4 years, 3 years or 4. I'm not sure, like 3 or 4. But as I was saying, you can begin here, but usually if as a staff position mainly, you go to a country and then you are there 4 years, 5, and then you can have to change to other countries if they are not short-term opportunities, short-term opportunities, and those are more for like staff. And if you want, like as a consultant, if you want a position abroad, you can, but it's gonna be like a local consultant. Like you won't have this like international status. You will have, it's kind of tricky because in the country offices, they used to hire more local consultants. Like for example, if I'm from Peru, they hire me as a Peruvian because they know I know like the Peruvian context. But then as a staff, like as a specialist, you can be international. It's very like, it's tricky and opposite because consultants are all locals, but then staff are all international. You have both things. And yeah, I think basically that. But yeah, they usually are like 4 or 5 years in each country.
Thank you.
So I think we're at time. So please join me in thanking Claudia and Alessandra for spending this time with us. It was extremely valuable. I think everyone hopefully feels that they are walking away with something that they didn't have before in terms of information. I know Claudia and Alessandra, you're both on LinkedIn. Are you open to linking in with people as one way for people to keep in touch?
Yes, sure.
How do you feel about that, Claudia?
I'm so sorry, my headphones cut out. What? I'm sorry.
The question about LinkedIn, just in terms of if students want to connect afterward with you, are you open?
Yeah, and I'll put my email in the chat in case that's helpful. Ali, you don't have to, but if you want.
Perfect. Yeah.
Me too. Yeah. So thanks again. We appreciate you being here. This is the first in our alumni career chat series. We have at least, I think we have 3 more alumni career chats coming that we're advertising soon. And one of them actually is someone at Estee Lauder in their kind of social responsibility area. So that's kind of interesting that Claudia was there before. Thanks for sharing your email addresses. I'll make sure everybody has those too. All right, thanks everyone. Have a great day. Look forward to seeing you again. Thanks, Claudia and Alessandra. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.